Should be going. Good morning. Good morning indeed. I hope you all had a restful night's sleep there. Today, we're working on rigs and bones and such. I think I'm actually going to start with our little spirit guy over here. And then we'll get to this guy since he's going to be more complicated second here. So let's just hop right in and see what we got going on here. So we'll set that guy back to where he belongs and start laying out the bones. Probably we'll start armature. I'm going to call this rig underscore spirits. We'll do a couple things here to make our life easier. I'm going to set this in front so that I can always see it. And then we'll just go through and start the process here. Oh, and you know what? Let me also turn on name. No. Rig bones. Somewhere in here there should be names. Perfect. Excellent. So we can name as we go along. Because in rigging, you definitely want to have everything named, because it can get really complicated pretty quickly here. So I'm going to call this deform underscore. Actually, no, I lied. I'm just going to call this master. And while I'm at it, it's been a while since I've been here. Can I set this to... No, I lied. And in fact, I lied about several things. I'm going to call this root instead. We're going to call it root for now. Somewhere is an option to change its rotation mode fundamentally, and I don't remember where that is necessarily. So I'll just worry about that part later. So we've got root here, and we'll go through and we'll test these things out repeatedly as we go along. Let me also make sure that this doesn't have any more modifiers. Perfect. All right, so to start laying this out here, I think I'm going to want a big bone for most of the body that will control sort of the bulk of everything here. Good morning, hello, welcome, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm trying to think how I want to do this. I think I'm going to move this. I think the way I'm going to do this is I'll move this up towards the front here. And we'll do a bone to there, a bone to there, a bone to there, and a bone to there. And we'll call these deform underscore body, deform underscore torso, and then deform underscore and then deform underscore tail. Right. So I think that's how we'll do that. And I'm going to have a couple other things. I'll pull this out. We'll flip this guy around, so we'll have two little arm-like things going on. And call this. There also should be a way to global Z. Perfect. Active bone. Perfect. Actually, I lied. I'm gonna just have that face straight up as well. Perfect. So both of these are facing straight up. This will be deform underscore arm dot L, and this will be deform underscore arm dot. No, I'm sorry. Hand dot L. Let me get that just a little bit less obtrusively low, or obtrusively high, I guess. Yeah, there we go. Now it looks like I'm sitting somewhere. So I think I'll do that. Just debating about how I want all of this to go. It's been a while since I've rigged anything, so I'm having to sort of remember as I work here. These should have a button that is symmetrize. Perfect. So there's a fun thing is that anything that you give the proper affix to, so like .L in this case stands for left-hand side. You can always hit symmetrize, and that will duplicate those bones and their transforms on the other side, which is nice. Have those face up, have those face up, have all of that be parented to that. And I think that's it. I don't think there's, I think everything else will be what I'm debating about right now is, so I've got this bone, and bones all, like, twist from their base, which is the big, thick boy up here. So if I have this like this, oh, and you know what, I'm sorry, let me, somewhere, there we go. This will rotate from the face, which I kind of think I just need this bone to be facing the other direction. Where's my button? Flip. No, not flip names. Flip the thing. Separate bones. No, not separate. Alt P, disconnect this. Alt P, disconnect. And then there should be a thing that's flip. Maybe it's reverse. Somewhere there's a way to make the bone do switch direction. There we go. So now if I pop in, basically his main sort of point of articulation is going to be right here. So if I rotate this, this will get his body to sort of move around, and we can bob up and down and turn left and right here. And then his tail all will do that same thing in different directions, like such. I think this is it for the deformation bones, I think. And then we'll go in and we'll add controls to all of this afterwards. And I'm going to try and keep the controls as simple as possible, because again, I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on this. Also, welcome everybody. Thank you for stopping in. These should be parented to this, keep offset. So now if I turn this, those follow, which for now is good. Do we have, these should have also a, oh, God. I'm debating about just how much stuff I want to do. So now these should not inherit the rotation of their parent, so he can do kind of like a woo sort of thing. Because I imagine he'll be doing this a lot, right? I imagine there'll be a lot of this movement going back and forth, and he'll sort of like keep his arms oriented forward. I don't want him to be a fish with his arms forward, right? I want him to kind of like bob and weave, but I don't want it to look like Superman bobbing and weaving, you know, where he's doing like a slithery snake thing. So that will work fine, I suppose. This might be really simple. I might not even do like a full thing. Okay, so we got that, and then we'll go ahead and hit Control Save, and we'll start off by just linking these two things together, being better about everything. Sorry, hold on. This needs to be parented to that, but kept offset. So now if I move that, good, everything moves around. We turn off inherit rotation for that as well. Yeah. And then, you know what? I wonder... No, yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Perfect. Just figuring stuff out as I go along here. Okay. So all of this then is parented to this, and then this needs to be parented to the root. Keep offset. So now if we move the root around, everything else goes with it. And I think what I'll do is I'm actually going to... I shouldn't do this, but I think I'm going to. Welcome, Antarctican. How you doing today? I'm going to take just the root, and I'm going to turn the root kind of into its own control, which I don't... This is lazy. This is lazy and bad, but we're going to do it. And then this is the thing that it should have... somewhere is its... it might be in pose mode. That I can change... Yeah, there we go, there we go. It needs to... I think just XYZ is fine. It'll predominantly... Oh, but if none of that is following the thing... It's okay. We'll put on copy rotation for... here, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's move this back to where it was. Okay, so here I'm going to turn off deform. So this is a non-deforming bone. This one is. Everything else should be a deforming bone. That's good, that's good, that's good, 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 good. And if those are, then the other ones are. And what we're going to do is we're going to save, and then we're going to just parent this to this, and we're going to do so with automatic weights. So now, if I go into pose mode, I can sort of see what I've got going on. And I think everything back here will probably be doing just fine. I'll want to remove a little bit of the weight near the top, so it's maybe not quite so messing with the back of his head. But I think everything down here is kind of doing exactly what I want it to. These are only really going to move along this axis and this axis. I don't necessarily imagine a lot of twisting in this direction. Maybe, but not really. Little tail, doing little tail things, that's fine and dandy. It's up here that needs a little bit of work. And here where you can do, yeah, this looks good. Does this... Yeah, this is also just affecting more than I think I want it to, but on the whole is doing okay. And then this is quite good. So, hello. You have to make sound effects if you're ever animating anything or getting ready to, like while rigging as well. Sound effects super important. That way you can like go up and you can be like, okay, so now just for a couple controls to make this a little bit easier. I thought, oh no, I'm sorry. Let's go into weight painting. Weight painting first. That's what I would rather do first. Weight paint, and then is this the button? I don't remember what the button to quick select. Let me click a button real quick. Give me a second. I don't remember what the shortcut is here. Blender, weight painting, quick select bone. Control shift click. Control shift. I thought it was like right click or something. Nope, that does not seem to be correct. If anyone remembers the shortcut, please tell me. Oh, that's okay, okay, okay. I think I understand why. Because I need to select this, and then go into weight paint. Okay, all right. I figured it out. Which, in case anyone wants to know, and I forget this all the time, so you actually have to select the rig first, and then select the mesh before you go into weight painting in order to quick select bones. And then it's just Alt left click, and that'll let you quick select bones and do what you need to do there. So let's take a look at this guy. I think there's a lot of these things that we can make a lot more red here. Let me make sure that X-axis mirror is on for this so that we're painting both sides. And I'm actually going to get... I don't normally like to do this. I normally like to enter weights by hand. But we're here and the time is now, so I'm going to use a tablet to paint some of these weights in. Which helps if you actually plug. Oh, goodness. How's everyone doing this evening? There we go. Both sides, please. Excellent. And then I will take the strength down to not quite as high. Yeah, this will work great for me. So I'm just going to paint these in so that the body has the most control over all of the body parts, as it ought to. We'll work on like transitions and fading maybe later. Should have full control over pretty much everything on the head. And then I'm going to bring this quite a ways down the arm. Okay, so now if I select this arm, this is all pretty good. I just want to like shrink the range. So what weight painting is, just in case anyone doesn't know, is you have a model. It's made of vertices, right? Looks something like this. And then each of these vertices follows or mimics the transformations of a bone to a certain amount, right? A percentage from 0 to 100. So in theory, this vertex should follow this first bone, the one called deformed body, 100%. So it perfectly mimics all of the transformations of the body bone. And then this bone down here, called deformed tail, should have 0% influence over this vertex. What weight painting does is it's just a way to sort of represent that visually, right? So here we can see that the red areas are closer to 100% correlation, and the dark blue areas are closer to 0% correlation. And so because we've got a little bit of this blue up here where there's at least a small amount of it, what's happening is whenever I move this arm, then some of the head moves as well. And that's fine in theory. It's just that we want that to not be the case. We want this to be basically no influence up as we go up here. So we're going to go in and change kind of all these values just a little bit. And you can do so, fortunately, through the nice way of weight painting. One more thing I'm going to do while I'm doing this is I'm actually going to change this over from octahedral to wires. That way I can just see what I'm doing a little bit better here, without having big ol' bones in the way. There's one other thing I want to turn on, which is the wireframe. Yes. Can I take the opacity of that down? No. That's fine. What's everyone else doing this evening? Or just even, how are you doing, Antarctican? Right, oh my goodness. Antarctican. Perfect. And then now that we are in pose mode, I can actually do rotations to sort of see this while I'm working on it, right? So I can pull things out here. And I can actually see, okay, this is how it sort of affects everything. And I can paint those weights while I'm in here, which is super awesome. Yeah. Good is better than an alternative answer to that question, as there are many different ways to answer that question. So we got that. Let's go ahead and flip that back. We'll do rotate this really high up, like you're trying to go rar or something like that. That's pretty good. Move it in. Now, actually, when I move the arm in, it's clipping through the face, but I don't mind that. I do not mind that at all. See if there's anything else I particularly want to change. I think just this bit over here I want to be a little bit less, and then we'll probably be pretty good. So now if I do that, it's just a little bit less. And I don't know if you can see here, right in this area here is a, you can see that it looks like I have no influence over that area for this arm. But if I take it and I move this, you can actually see that back butt there area is changing, as well as a couple areas on the face, which is just a good indication that you haven't gotten everything, even if you wanted to. So I'm going to go over really, really pressing hard here. Just make sure I get some of these areas. And now they're not moving anymore, which is good. That's what we want. Perfect. Still a bunch of movement going on over here that I don't really want to have happening. Now, I'm quite certain that a lot of these things have zero influence, but they're still moving, right? So if you're ever doing weight painting, this, like, people hate weight painting for this exact reason. So I'm doing this, and a lot of the face is still moving, and I'm quite certain that I've pressed really hard on my tablet and that all of these areas have sort of zero influence. So why is it still moving, right? Well, this bone is responsible for moving another bone. And the other bone that it's moving is the hands that we made. So I'm willing to bet, and we'll see if I'm right in just a moment, but I'm willing to bet that this does in fact have no influence over the face there, but because we use sort of an automatic envelope weight for the initial weight painting, that the hand picked up a little bit of the face. So let's go ahead and click on this guy and see. Yes, so this extends over here, and this is indeed what is moving, stuff like that. So this in particular is something that like causes a lot of new people nightmares as they're learning weight painting, because you're like, I'm certain that these things don't have any weight with that bone. But if that bone is in control of other bones, and those bones are not set up properly, then you're going to encounter situations. So, hooray for difficulty! And now we've got this. There's still a little bit of weight up here. Now it's just this, as far as I can see. And there is a way that you can pull up all the numbers and stuff like that. I haven't done any rigging in a while, so I don't even want to go through to try and remember what those things are. But this works. This is great. This is mostly great. Yeah. Yeah. And then this controls sort of all of that area, which is good. I might even reduce some of this in here just to create a bit more stretching. So going on the topic of like knowing what your bones are doing and why, you can actually create effects by having it work that way. Saying, oh, because this is working one way, I can make sure that it works a different way here. So that's good. No, I lied. I don't have it work that way. So this is deformarm.l. There should be a way, and I haven't done this in a while. Oh goodness. all of my bad things are like here we can see my lack of familiarity here shining through from not having done this in a while. There should be a button that says copy mirror vertex group. No, that's not what we want. There's a way you can copy the vertex data from one area and duplicate it to another one. I just don't remember what that button is. So let's not put it off. Let's go ahead and look it up right now. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Blender, copy vertex weights. Do. Oh my goodness. How to copy a vertice's weight to another vertex. Oh, it's just Control C, Control Paste. It's just Control Copy, Control Paste. Let me make sure. Nope. Negative Ghostwriter. Negative Ghostwriter. Oh, that's a lie. Oh my goodness. I'll worry about it in a minute. Let's finish doing some of the other body stuff first. The internet is trying to tell me that it is things that I know it is not. So, oops. Okay. So we'll worry about it in a moment. Another thing about just weight painting in general that you should know if you're doing anything like this is also make sure that all of your vertices have 100% weight. So you don't want to have any vertices, and we'll check for this in a minute, but we don't want to have any vertices that have like 50% of their weight attributed to one bone, and then the other 30% just isn't anywhere. That causes big problems. So we're going to check for that in just a moment. And then we'll come up here, take this weight down to 0, get rid of pretty much all of that, and all of that. So now if I rotate this along the x-axis, it should be just these things moving. There's a little bit extra, so we'll adjust that as we go along here. Heck yeah. Go one more bone down. More of the same, more of the same. The idea of leaping through the air. That's funny. And then these are coming up awfully far here. I don't want it to do that. And in fact, let me do this and we'll bring the weight up here just a little bit. There was a course I wanted to get a long while ago that was like how to deal with even the trickiest weight painting situations. Because this stuff does get less than pleasing to try and figure out at times. I apologize because there's not necessarily a whole lot to the process other than just click, double check, click, double check, click, double check, click, double check. I will say, though, that right now we've got a song going on, which is Look to the Sky. It's a remix of it, of course. But it's a remix of Look to the Sky from DDR, Dance Dance Revolution. And that is awesome. I loved that game. I played the living daylights out of it. There's a couple things that are inheriting rotation here, which looks like just the main bone, which I will want to change in a moment. There's some stuff we're going to do to create controls and stuff, but oh, and also this pink means that you have no vertex group for that particular bone. So it's good that we see that on the root. That's what you want to see. And I think we're already right back at just me needing to remember how to copy one vertex group over to a different vertex group. Let me see. Arm. Is there a way I can even tell? Am I losing my marbles a little bit? I feel like I'm losing my marbles. I feel like this arm doesn't need adjusting. It looks like it's been done already. Here, let me try something. If I do that and I come over to arm L. Oh, wild! That didn't used to be that way. Does anyone know? Does anyone have experience with rigging? Because that's cool as hell. Okay, so this is cool. I don't know when or why this is working this way. So we're on Blender version 4.0. And the way 4.0 works is that, I'm sorry, the way Blender used to work is that if you would make an adjustment on one bone of some kind, so here I'm working on the left arm. If I were to make an adjustment on the left arm, that would not be reflected over to the right arm. What I would need to do is I would need to copy all of this information that is in the left arm in order to transfer that over to the right arm. And that was easy to do. You just click copy, select the place you want it to go, and hit paste, right? That's fine. But now it seems like, and I don't know, but here I've got the left arm selected, or I've got the right arm selected. And if I just draw a big line through it, right? If I go back over to the left arm, that big line has automatically mirrored over. So I don't have to go through and find anything or copy anything. It just is. And I don't know if that's because we symmetrized our model in order to get these bones over here. I don't necessarily know why that's happening, but I think I'm pretty sure that's a new feature, and that is cool as hell. That's so cool. Oh, and we've got... Oh, there's all sorts of new stuff. There's all sorts of new stuff. Do that. 0 weights active. Oh. Wait. What is this? I'm just now learning about all of this new stuff. Is all active? None active? I wonder. Sorry, give me a second just to experiment because this is so cool. What is the weight of this? Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So that's cool, but I don't necessarily know what to do with that. Oh. So these weights over here aren't actually at 0. They're just really, really, really close to 0. Hello. Someone came in and asked the question, what are we doing right now? We are rigging and weight painting our models so that they can deform properly. But part of that is that we've got some new stuff that I haven't played with, and I don't know how it works or what's going on. Changes in Unreal Engine version 4.0. Gradient. Oh. I'm sure that does something. I don't know what that does, though. One would think that it does. Oh, weird. I should look in the patch notes, and you should too. If you ever find some new stuff, always go look and check out and be like, "Oh, this is the new stuff here." Does this have a gradient tool? Oh. Watch, this is something that's been around for like a long time, and I just had no idea. So cool! Oh my goodness! Can I? Man, okay, so if I select a point and then I draw away from that point, let's do like weight 1. The issue is just that it's like such a okay. Here, what happens if I select more points? That's so cool. That's so cool. Okay. I don't know when all of this stuff here. Can I see what the there should be a thing somewhere that shows me the weight of an individual vertex. Weights here. I'll play around later. I'm sorry. I this is all new stuff here. The important thing is that our character is currently weighted, and there's new tools that I could stand to go learn. And those tools include automatic mirrors, which I don't know how you would go about turning off, but oh, unless it's this literal button right here, mirror vertex groups. That's probably what it is. That is, in fact, exactly what that is. Okay, well, I found the button for it. That's cool as hell. Does that apply to everything? Symmetry, mirror vertex groups. That's awesome. Okay, well, now that we know that that's a thing and an option, we can certainly use that moving forward here. So this moves, it's good. And this is a really, really good example of, I might actually need to go out and find something. So you can see I'm turning this arm here. And as I'm doing so, it's adjusting part of the face over on the other side. Is that true for here? No, that's only true for here. So we need to kind of figure out why that is and what's going on to cause that. So let's go back into weight paint. I think it might have been all my messing around. Okay. Yeah, that should be good. Boom, 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 boom. Perfect. Cool. So now we've got our arm, and our arm can do a little wishy motion just like this. We can do a little wishy motion just like this, little waves with our ghost hands, which is awesome. This shouldn't be affecting too much else, and it doesn't, and that's awesome. We can move them in and out. Our body rotates from this point down over here, which is great. So if I pick this, it'll go perfect, which is kind of what we want. And then most importantly is as we're doing this, the arms stay oriented forward. And considering most of the movement we're going to be doing, that's going to be a good thing because I think anyway, because I don't really want to have to deal with animating the arms 2 seconds, and I want it to be kind of spooky and ethereal without me having to do extra work. So that'll work out fine. We've got the tail here. This is doing all of the things that it should, which is awesome. We can do our little booty wiggle as well. This can do a bigger booty wiggle. And then our legs down here as our little tail. Perfect. So the last big thing I'm going to do, and I might just send it like this, is our root here. There's a couple things that follow its rotation that should not, namely this bone. So we'll turn off inherent rotation like such. Or rather, I'm so sorry. No, that's fine. That's perfect. That's what we want. Is this we can move around, and that does with that. Then what I'm going to do is back over in edit mode. I am going to add in one extra control. Is I really like the idea of ghosts and goblins and all that stuff doing full rotations, like doing loop-de-loops in the air, because if I was a ghost, I certainly would do something along those lines. So we're going to add in a control and a specifically for just doing loops in the air. So I'll take a bone, we'll put it right up here. I'm going to put this right sort of in the center of the body, and I'm going to call this control underscore rotations. And we'll make it nice and small and then place it right here. And this is not a deformation bone, so it doesn't need to have any deform. And what it's going to do is presumably, let me double check here, all of these bones are going to Control-Shift-C copy rotation from should be local space to local space. So now if I rotate this, that bone follows the rotation 1-to-1. Perfect. And we're going to do that for each of these bones. So boof, copy rotation, local to local. There is some way to make it so that it you just copy an existing modifier over, but I don't remember the shortcut for that. So here we are. Rotation local to local. And then from here to here, copy rotation local to local. And then this is a bone that is parented to this. We'll keep the offset. So now if I bring up the root like such and rotate it around, this happens, which is fine and tracks. But then I can take this and I can rotate the entire guy around. We've got something going on with the arms, if you see, which is not quite what it needs to be doing. Which means that as these are spinning around, they're spinning around kind of in the wrong direction. So that's doing good. What I need is, do I invert the x-axis? Do I only need to invert the x-axis is the question. No, I probably need to invert all of them. So now if I rotate this around, nope, there's at least one axis that I don't need to invert. Oh, and I'm just not paying attention. Okay, so that's doing it correctly there. And then the Z as well. So here we've got this and this. Is that right? Yes. So now if I do that, something is still going a little awry here. Oh, and I probably know what's going awry. Um, is let me change this from local space to local space. Let me do this with do local with parent. And let's take off these inversions. Local with parent. Let me turn on something else here. Basically, what's going on is just that, and somewhere there should be X's. Yes. That still doesn't track as to why that's not doing quite what I want it to do here. In part because everything else is. So why aren't you? Hello, Suitor. How you doing today? I might be biting off too much with hmm. Or you know what? Let me hold on. Let me get rid of these. And then let me just this is a debate I get to have. What if I just turn on inherit rotation? So rather let me try something here. Let me try having these guys. Well, turn off inherit rotation on both of them, and then I'll actually have them follow this guy in terms of a bone here, which at least will give me a slider for turning things on and off here. So now if I do this, it's still do. Ooh, goodness. Weird. Okay. In that case, I may not even bother with it. Because it's not doing clearly what I need or want it to. Yeah, working on a game is a lot of work. Yeah, and these I'll be making animations for these little guys. Basically as sort of stand-in animations, just to get stuff working the way it needs to. Dude, literally all of this stuff is behaving the way I intend it to, but why aren't the arms? You killing me. Why aren't the arms? Hmm. 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 That's weird. No, so the goal is to add in a bone here, which basically just um, I there's a real simple fix is that I can just click both of these things on and it will do basically what I need and want it to. Um, so I might just do that. Um, and in so doing, now the ghost can do kind of a whole flip here, which is cool. And it should be able to do that kind of along each axis, which is great. I was just hoping I could sort of separate the hands in a simple way so that the arms did an inherent rotation, but there doesn't seem to be a simple way to do it with this few bones. And I don't really want to spend the time to come up with a better way to do it, is sort of the issue there. So without a better way to do it, we're gonna kind of stick with this, and that'll just be fine, I suppose. But everything else is more or less working as intended, which is awesome. Except this Z needs to not be inverted. Um, right? Yeah, cool. So, and then this bone needs to be set to X, Y, Z Euler rotations. So here's just a note for you about rigging: is most things default to quaternion, which is and I always call this Euler. It's not Euler, it's Euler, is the pronunciation for it. But I called it something wrong for far too long for me to be able to correct it overnight. So quaternion rotations use a fourth axis in order to calculate rotations, which is great most of the time. But there's an issue in that quaternion rotations can only rotate 180 degrees. In order to rotate 360 degrees, they don't like doing that, right? Um, and the thing is, with a Euler rotation, you can actually see in that little window in the top right that this rotation has gone well over 360 degrees, which is awesome. So that means that our ghost can now do like little flips and dips and all this stuff, which you wouldn't normally be able to do if you were using quaternion. The problem is that Euler rotations tend to suffer from something called gimbal lock. And what gimbal lock is just if you're not careful with how and what ways you're rotating things, you'll get really messed up. Um, so that's that. Um, Perfect. Yeah, they quaternions and Euler rotations both have their places, but it can get wonky. So with everything, I might just call this the rig. This is again really simple. I don't want it to be very complex, but we have our way to do like full 360s, which is awesome. And part of the issue here just might be that I have it like. Let me just flip it. Let me just flip it. Since its whole purpose is to hello, sir. Yeah. Yeah, we'll just do that. It's a bit bass backwards, but it's fine. So this is going to be our ghost. We're gonna just call it here. I don't want to make anything fancier than I have to. So we've got our root, which is great. He can sort of float around on this. Um, we can go in by, oh no, right, we can't. Not if, oh goodness, I forgot about that. Yeah, we'll just, that's fine, that's fine. But we can rotate things. We won't need these on most of the time anyway. I don't mind going through and keyframing those values. And everything else sort of works the way it needs to. Let me turn these to local for the moment so I'm not, like, mucking with it every 2 seconds. Yeah, that'll work fine. Again, don't want to put more into it than is necessarily required. But for the person, we're going to have to do at least a little bit here. So let me turn off the names in front. No, we'll keep in front, but turn off the axes. Perfect. So this will work fine. This will be our ghost rig. We can go ahead and hide the majority of this. Now then, let's lay out our body here and get this guy sort of set up like you do. Make sure his feet are nice and on the ground. And then we'll add in an armature, and we'll call this rig underscore body 00, just in case anything goes terribly wrong. And we'll do the exact same things as we'll in front axes and names, and we'll go in and we'll just start editing everything here. So take this. Come on. There should be a rotation mode that is individual origins. Yeah, there we go, there we go. So we'll call this the root. And then this fella is going to come up and we'll do this guy here. And I'm thinking the way I'll do it is I'll do just the hips. Hips. One for the torso, because again, I want this to be really simple. One for the torso. One for the neck, and then one for the head, like such. We'll call that there. So this is going to be deform underscore hips, or no, we'll call it pelvis. Deform underscore torso. Deform underscore neck. And then deform underscore head. Then we'll take these guys, and I will give them, we'll clear the parent, and then we're going to give him a full clavicle, because I just always think that the deformation for it looks nice when you do. We'll move that down just a little bit. Boom, boom. The hand is probably going to be the part of this that takes the longest amount of time. So we'll get this, that, and a little bit of bone orientation. So this actually, I want to come up just a little bit more like that. That should be fine. And then we'll have this here. Move it into place. Take this, move it into place. And then we're going to reorient all of these so that they have their z-axis facing more or less straight up. There's a few of them that I'll want to twist here. So, for example, I want the z-axis of this particular bone to be pointing up. So, okay. There is a, yes, you can mirror bones. That is an easy thing to do, and I'll actually show you in a minute. But for rigging, when we were modeling this guy, there was a point where I was talking about the arms. And just a bunch of issues like and concessions that you have to make whenever you're making a character or anything that you plan to animate. One of the concessions is that when we put bones in a body like this, we're going to ultimately be changing the relationships and positionings of all the textures on this body because we're going to be manipulating the vertices directly, right? And the biggest, most painful problem area, almost in all of 3D, is the shoulders. And the reason why it's such a rough spot for people is because the shoulders and the arms in general have a ridiculous range of movement. The range of movement of arms is just, it's crazy. It's crazy, right? So when you model your character, if you model them in such a way that they are in a fairly natural, neutral pose, such as this one, then generally you'll have a pretty good time with textures. Generally, you won't suffer as much stretching. Generally, things will look pretty good most of the time, which is great. That's how we want it. But there is an issue, which is the reason why people didn't do it this way for a long time. And it's where the classic like T-pose comes from, and it's why we like the T-pose, which is, and it has to do with bones, right? This is the big thing. Is I'm going to go ahead and take this root bone. And the cool part is that with its axes currently turned on, every bone has a set of axes that it listens to, right? So here we can see that this right here is the x-axis for the bone. This up here is the z-axis for the bone. And then the y-axis always runs along its length. You can change that, but this is generally our preferred way of doing things. The cool thing is that with this bone, right, is you will notice that currently its x-axis, the x-axis of the bone, is oriented in a very, very specific and awesome way. And the way it's oriented right now is that the x-axis is in line with the x-axis of the world. The whole world has an x-axis as well, and currently our bone is in line with it. So if I take this exact bone and I move it half a unit positive in the x-axis, it will move half a unit in the global x-axis, right? That's great. We like that. If I move it along positively along its y-axis, it'll move positively in the global y-axis. So right now, because we've got the axes of this bone oriented to match the axis of the world, anytime we make a transformation, it's very logical. It's very easy to keep track of, right? Well, what happens if, right, I just flip it 180 degrees around its z-axis here, right? This is where rigging gets problematic, like right here, okay? We know in our heads, right, just because this is the program that we're working in and what we're doing here, that over here is positive x, right? Now, if I grab and I move this bone half a unit in positive x, it does what I wanted it to do. It clicks over like this. However, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to pose mode, and I'm going to grab and move it half a unit along its, oh my goodness. It should be... It's not doing it because I'm typing it in and Blender's being smarter than it's supposed to be. I don't want Blender to actually be this smart. But if you go up into the very, very top left in this area up here, you'll actually be able to see the problem, right? If I take this bone and I move it half a unit along the x-axis positively, up there you see it says 0.5 in the very, very top. You see now it's moved in the opposite direction. And that kind of is the conundrum, right? Is that as your bones start to twist and turn through space, directions get really, really, really messy. So part of what making a good rig is just making sure that your directions are consistent in a way that the people who are operating it, the animators, always know sort of which direction things are supposed to be facing and supposed to be going, right? So the whole thing about the T-pose and why it's nice is because your arm is aligned with a world axis, right? So if I want to move it, like if I want to rotate it on the Z, I know that that will rotate the arm forward because that's the like default axis of the rig because it's aligned with the world. When you model your arms like this, right, you encounter a problem where I no longer have my arm aligned with any kind of axis. It's just sort of floating, sticking out there, and it's not really doing anything. So one of the things you do, and like one of the concessions you have to make, is that I want to make sure that my bone here is aligned with my arm more than anything else. And that can create some kind of janky sort of interactions if you're not careful, and it's a big headache that we all just wish wasn't the way it was, but it is. So, you know, here we are. Yeah, no, I feel that. Someone's just saying that Suitor's saying is doing a low poly with their game and trying to be clever with the topology to get around this particular issue, and it is in fact a very particular issue. It's like it's rough, man. But anyway, we got our arm here. I'll get the hand in just a second. There's a whole thing about local space and world space and stuff. What you can do as kind of a workaround, and I learned this from what's his name? Yeah, I'll find his name. I'll find his name and I'll show you his name maybe on Monday or something like that. But I learned that one of the things you can do to get around this is basically have all your deformation bones, which is why these all have the affix DFRM for deformation, is make sure that those are aligned to whatever they need to be, and then have your controls for whatever you're going to be operating oriented to the world space. And that just makes life a lot easier so that you're never actually operating on these, you're operating on the controls instead. Anyway, moving along here. I'm going to go ahead and make the leg. The leg should be pretty easy. Put that all the way down sort of at the knee, like such. This goes down to the ankle. And then I'm going to hide this for just a moment so I can see down here working on the foot. And we'll come out to here and then straight along my y-axis like such. And these I will also move into their kind of relative horizontal positions. In fact, I might actually delete that bone and then re-extrude it forward from this sort of new location. No, I lied. Well, no, that's fine. That's fine. So then what we'll do is that, and we're going to match the rotations of all of these to the active bone, which is good. Kind of. Some of these didn't flip the way I wanted them to. Let's see, RX. Oops. RX. No, I want that flipped the other way around. So here, global positive Z, global negative Z. Perfect. And this will be global positive Z. No, this doesn't know. Let's do positive or negative Y. Yes. Okay. So that I've got, and in a lot of these cases, consistency is the most important thing, right? So, to make sure that the axis on which things bend is just accurate to whatever you need or want it to be, right? So in this case, I want all of the forward-facing axes to be Z, ideally. Can I do that to that? I can. Perfect. That works for me. I do have a video for this game's concept. Let me see if I can pull that up for you real quick. because I know there's been a bunch of people asking about it, and it would be a good place to show this again. So give me just 1 second here. And then probably over the weekend, in my time away from you guys, I'm going to go through, and there's a bunch of things I'm going to make in particular. One is a setup for this so that we don't have the rainy background anymore. We've got things that are nice and better there. But also just to make the stream more appealing overall. But yes, this is the initial concept and kind of where we're going for the idea as a whole. Let me make sure that takes you actually to the right place. It should. Yes, it does. Perfect. Whoops, you didn't see that screen. So let's go through and then rename and reparent everything, and then we'll make our hand, and then we'll be in pretty good shape. So we have the deformed pelvis, deformed torso. All of these have their axes facing the same way. This will be deform underscore clavicle dot L. Deform underscore arm arm high dot L. Underscore arm low dot L. We'll make the hand in a moment. This will be deform underscore leg high dot L. Deform underscore leg low dot L. Deform underscore foot dot L, and then deform underscore toes dot L. And then give these their correct parents. So this will be keep offset. So that's doing what it needs to do. This follows the chest. This is keep offset. Whoops. Control P, keep offset. And now, and this is something I encourage you to do often, is I'm going to save. I'm going to save a lot. And whenever I save, I always press Control Save like 6 times in a row. But we're going to save, and then what we're going to do is, before we go too much further with this process, is we're going to check to make sure that our low resolution geometry does what we need it to do. So I'm going to take all of this. Oh, you know, I lied. I should mirror it before I worry too much about this. So let me symmetrize it. I wasn't going to, but I should, and there's a reason why, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So here, symmetrize, perfect, and now everything is popped over and been renamed to .r. So with this, we'll hit Control Save. And now what I'm going to do is preemptively, I'm going to bind the skeleton to the mesh. And I will explain why in just a moment here, right? Is that we can come in with pose mode now, and now if we move an arm, the arm moves as intended. Again, I'll need to do the hands. But the thing is that now we can check and see, and I can actually show off some of the bits of the geometry and why we made them the way we did, and why that's super duper cool. Because I was talking a bunch about things like does this? Yeah, I was talking a bunch about triangles and why we would use triangles in some cases, and why we would use quads and all sorts of stuff. And now we can see why, right? So if I come up to here, and I might need to readjust some of these bones, right? But if I move this up, we can see everything is doing pretty well. It's doing pretty nice. And I can move this here, and I probably should move the bone a little bit. Well, we would need to do some weight painting. But this is actually going pretty well. I might want to move it, and this, sorry. Let me tackle one thought at a time, because I'm seeing a whole bunch of stuff and responding to a whole bunch of stuff without saying anything here. Bad habits. So, first on the topic of modeling with triangles. Last time we talked a whole bunch about when you should model with quads, when you should model with triangles, what the purposes of them are. And here we see I have a big triangle right at a point of articulation, which is something that I generally would advise you don't do, right? generally would say don't put triangles at any parts that need to bend a lot. However, this is fun because what happens is, because of this triangle, and because of how triangles collapse, when I close this, you can see that this sort of edge of the triangle right here, this one edge, collapses into nothing. And then these faces, they don't bend, they simply disappear, which is awesome. It's part of the reason why I made all of the joints like this. Is so this back here is not a bending of joints. It's an actual collapsing of the geometry. If I were to go in and I don't know if there's another place where I can show this off very well. Maybe even just in the toe here, right? Is if I bring the toe down, the only thing that happens at the toe here, the only thing that makes the toe different, is that we've just got this one string of vertices here that is acting as a point of articulation for the model to bend, right? And so when I bend just this part, you see that nothing like collapses in the way, it just sort of gets bent really far out of shape. These aren't vanishing so much as they're like getting contorted and twisted into a new shape. So all of that to say is that's why we did the joints this way, is it sort of maintained this knee shape in the front, and because the bone is located exactly on this triangle, it bends in a very, very useful and pleasing way for us, which is awesome. That's exactly what you want. This is a good knee joint, and we can actually bend the knee quite far, and everything is still maintained pretty darn well. Right? This is awesome. This is good. This is how we want this sort of thing to look with a bent knee, with no other weight painting. We haven't done any fixing. There's no additional thing. This is just out of the box how this looks, and that's pretty darn good. Let's take a look. Things like this are, like the foot, for example, are pretty much the way they are. We'll need to do a little weight painting on the foot and stuff, but that's fine. The hips, I'm a bit nervous about this. We'll see how it works. So far, a lot of that is pretty good. We've actually still got a butt with our leg straight out in front, which is kind of impressive. That's not normally something you would have. Let's do a fancy... Yeah, so we still got a butt, which is why we added in that edge loop around the butt. Just talking about geometry and why it is where it is that this edge loop right in here, right? That's there to retain this information when the leg moves. And so far, it's doing a very good job of that. Let's do a thing to the back. Here, again, this is stuff that we can sort of fix with weight painting, but all in all, that's doing pretty good. And then let's move the leg out, whoops, like that. And again, this is weight painting stuff that we can fix in here. Oh, that's a good question. The question was, should the this joint here, like at this location, be placed, where should it be placed? And we can actually talk about that in a moment, going back to the skeleton. But kind of the issue, or not the issue, but like the general idea is that you want to balance placing things where they belong, as well as in the center of mass. And there is no right answer, right? So in an ideal world, I like to place my debating. Yeah, no, we'll talk about this now. Boom, let me select everything and pop over. So yeah, the question is that whenever you're making a joint, where does this go? This is another fun bit about just rigging in general, is where does this belong? And the answer is that it kind of depends, right? For the best distribution of weight paints and general performance, you always want it to be in the middle of the center of mass. So that's the middle left and right, the middle forward and backward, and the middle up and down. So this would be like the ideal place most of the time, right? Is right here. Ignore the other one. It doesn't exist. In fact, we'll hide it. Yeah. So this would be the ideal placement for most of your joints. And this is true for the arm, this is true for the ankles, this is true for most things. However, there are nuances to bone placement. And in particular, one of the nuances of this bone placement is, again, we're talking about the topology here, is that it'd be really, really nice is if I have this here, when it bends, it won't actually collapse this edge as much because it's directly on top of it, right? The further back it goes in this direction, right, the less it bends this nice, neat line that we want to have collapse. The other thing is that just given the leg and how it's oriented and stuff like that, I do like to have this forward quite a bit because I know that for the legs, I'm going to be using inverse kinematics, which is a system of solving the way the leg is supposed to be positioned. And the thing is that it needs to know, whenever you use inverse kinematics, it needs to know which way joints are supposed to bend. And the thing is that if all of these joints are in a super straight line like this, right? So here we have this super straight line of joints. When you put inverse kinematics on something like this, it goes, I don't know, man, right? Because I know that I'm supposed to bend in some way, but you haven't given me any indication of what that way is because all of the bones are in a straight line, right? So even though in theory, this would be ideal, it's more useful for us topology-wise to have it centered about here. And likewise, rigging-wise, it's more useful for us for the IK to give it this slight bend so that the IK solver knows how to, which direction it's supposed to actually be bending in. Which, on another note, someone was asking about why I don't buy assets and why I take so long to do everything and why I basically do things the hard way. And the answer is stuff like this. Again, I don't advise it, but it is the way I prefer to do things, right? Is that this is the rigging and the modeling all building towards the same goal at the end, right? But if you have a modeler who doesn't know anything about rigging and a rigger who doesn't know anything about animation, and neither of these people know anything about texturing, it gets really, really, really hard to create a good, cohesive product in the end, right? But if you know at least a little bit about other professions, especially ones that your work directly interacts with, this gives you a really, really great way to make things that are better for everybody. So there you go. But for going back to just joint placement in general here, while we have some very specific stuff that we're trying to do with the knee, things get a lot less specific around the ankle. And in particular, in creating a foot rig, which I guess we'll do on Monday, or I might do over the weekend. I might do all this over the weekend. We'll see. But for having a foot rig, the thing is that this in general will be a less dynamic and noticeable place than the knee will, right? So oops, pose mode. Let me hide all of this over here as well, right? So if I take the foot here, right, and I lower it down, this is one of the most extreme angles that the ankle will ever go in this particular direction, right? It's not going to do this ever. So we don't really need to worry about it, and we don't really need to model for it, and we don't really need to worry about our bone placement for it. Likewise, this is also about as far as it will ever go in the other direction, right? So this range of movement is like barely 90 degrees from this extreme to this extreme. That's about it, right? So bone placement here, this is where just center of mass works fine, and we don't need anything more complex than that. Similar with the toes. Comparing that to the whole leg, which has to go from here, maybe all the way up to here, that's a huge range. That's a much bigger range that we need to worry about. Plus, it's also just a much bigger part. It's much more obvious if this is not doing the thing it needs to be doing. And if you have like parts of your model sticking out the side here, it's gross. Ugh. Yes. So that's all of that. Everything looks like it's doing pretty well on the whole here. The arm collapses pretty well. I will probably move the clavicle a little bit. I'm surprised, coincidentally. Damn. Sorry, this looks pretty darn good. This looks way better than I thought it would. The arm going up, not so much. There's work to be fixed in there and to make stuff, because essentially what we're doing is we're not using our edge loop that we have in here very well with this particular bone placement. So I'm going to fiddle faddle with this, but the modeling part of it has resulted in just this looking really, 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 really nice. Very little stretching going on in here. Everything in the armpit is getting nice and closed off. That came out very well. I'm impressed and pleased with that. I didn't put in anything fancy to make the torso bend one way or another, which is part of the reason why we've got this. So another thing I was talking about, just in terms of like rigging and everything, is the importance of aligning vertices in pleasing concentric patterns. Which may be like, well, why, what does it matter if you have like a series of vertices which aren't super smooth in their transitions? And the answer is stuff just like this, right? So I don't know if you can see as well here, but I've got this very strange bump that's there because of the line of vertices. That's just where it's bending, right? But at an angle, because these are so like mismatched, it's moving them in a way that creates this really, really jagged effect. And if I were to turn off the wireframe, you can see the horrible kind of like line lighting along here. And that's just a case for making sure your geometry is as smooth as possible and consistent as possible in every axis. So there's that information for you. I should probably put in 2 chest bones, but I'm not going to. The neck is doing just fine. That's about good there. I'll take that. I think his neck is really long. I think I made the neck really long. Oh, maybe not. No. Yeah, his neck is a little long, but otherwise that's doing just fine. Oops. Cool. So, takeaway from this is whenever you make a model and you start laying out a rig, especially if it's a more complex model, because our ghost was, on the whole, really simple. And actually, there's another thing I should say just about modeling in general and this sort of stuff, is that you can be really creative and you can bend the rules whenever you're working with something that isn't people. If you're making a monster or a creature or like the ghost we made, there's no rule for what that's supposed to look like. So you can get pretty creative with it and you can be pretty loose and things can be a little sloppy and you can get away with a lot that doesn't make like perfect accurate sense. But the closer and closer you get to a person, the more and more strict you need to be with how good everything looks, because we're people and we recognize when something is not us really fast. like really depressingly fast. We recognize when something isn't human. Um, so like all of these little details, what this is building up to is just something that sells the illusion of being humanoid, and does so as well as possible. Um, here we've made our model. We're starting to rig it. We're starting to lay out the bones for deformation, and we're just checking to make sure that everything lines up and matches up the way it needs to. Okay, so let's go back here, and let's Alt H, pose, Alt H, and let's unbind these two things. I'm going to press Alt P no, sorry. From this, I'm going to press Alt P and clear its parent, and then I'm just going to go in and delete all of the bone groups. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Choosing to make a character entirely out of shapes is a great practice, but less so a practical practice. One of the things I did real quick that I do need to fix is I messed around with the locations of a lot of these bones. So fortunately, what you can do is, because stuff is symmetrized, so I can take all these bones on the left and I can simply get rid of them, then select the corresponding bones on the right and then hit symmetrize again. And that'll just pop them right back over, back in the positions that they need to be in, which is awesome. All right, so let's, oh my goodness. Dude. Time has gone so fast tonight. Oh, shoot. We're supposed to be done in 20 minutes. Was I ranting for that long? Okay. We'll finish up the hand. We'll get the deformations for the hand in real fast. And then yeah, definitely over the weekend, I'll probably do the rigging and get all of that squared away, so that we can animate on Monday. And yeah, we'll animate on Monday. Okay, so let's get this squared away here. This is a thing again where I'm going to turn on the wireframe so that I can see what I'm doing. You should always try to work with your wireframe on, whether you're sculpting, whether you're rigging, it does not matter. Always make sure your wireframe is on so you can see what you're doing and make sure that you're putting things where they need to go. And just like before, I'm going to, or just like with the leg, and the whole thing we talked about is the location of these things, is I'm going to try and put them just towards the tip of, because you can see I did the this little arrangement of polygons. I did this at every single axis collapsible joint, including on the fingers here. So we're going to try and essentially use that as best as we can. So pull these over and I'm going to align them just a little bit so that they're a little bit straighter here. And then I'm going to take just the final bone and just going back to what we were talking about earlier, is I'm going to change its rotation so that it matches more the up and down, because again, your fingers sort of, they rotate along their length as they go down your hand. So I'm going to do it in such a way that my axes are set up. Sort of gave up on that sentence at the end here. And I think this might actually be a bit high. I'm going to bring it a bit closer to where the exact point that it needs to bend is. Because fingers, as a fairly articulate thing, need to bend in a very, very sort of precise place. So right along, and you know, something else we can do, this will actually help this process. I'm going to go into edit mode, turn off some of the stuff I've got going on. Where's my, I don't need those on. is I'll select just this ring around here, and I will snap my cursor to that location, and then that's where I will put the end of my bone, right? And another benefit to this, coincidentally, just talking about having your bones oriented in such a way, is if you wanted to, putting an IK rig in fingers, I think is like a little bit insane. But if you wanted to, you could by adjusting these bones like this. Hello, Motivation. How you doing today? Motivation, that is a name. I could use more of that sometimes. But how's it going? How you doing today? We'll do to active bone. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole finger here, duplicate it over, and then set this. Can I set this to active element? Will that do? It does. Do this, pull it over, rotate them all over. Oops. And we'll go through and then just sort of readjust here. And I'll do the thing. You know what? Let's here for this. Let's actually pull in each of these and pull them all over, and then we'll set their initial joint locations and then work from there. So here, boom. Whoops. Nope. No. Goodness. Cursor to selected. Grab this. Grab the edge of that bone. Selection to cursor. This works fine just over yonder. Oh, that's actually a fantastic question. And it's actually a really good question just in terms of rigging and it's just a really good question. So the question is, when we talk about IK frequently, we're always talking about IK in terms of the legs. The legs are the most common place to put IK. It's like where, if you watch any tutorial, they're going to show you how to set up IK in the legs. It's like a whole thing that's where you put inverse kinematics. In case anyone doesn't know, and I'll always try to be leery of that, inverse kinematics and forward kinematics, there's the two kinds. There's forward kinematics and there's inverse kinematics. And so the difference between the two is, let me see if I have I'm just going to use right beside the camera here, is forward kinematics is, let's say that I want to throw a punch, and I want to throw a punch at the camera, right? So what I would do, if I were animating that, is I want my shoulder to be the place where all of my power is coming from. So I'd move my shoulder first, right? Then I would move my upper arm second, and then I would straighten out my forearm to like make it look like it's coming out as a punch. And then I would do that frame by frame as I'm like driving with my shoulder to deliver this punch. Like, boof, right? That's how I do that, right? This is called forward kinematics, where we're starting at my core and going out forward or outward towards my hand, right? So the kinetic force is here, 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 and then it goes out. And the thing is, that works great for lots of different things. There's lots of different things where that is the way you want to do that. Punches are great examples. Any sort of, really any motion, like if you were waving your arms around, if you were trying to reach up to grab something, anything like that is just a good time to use forward kinematics. But that's not the only thing we do with our hands. There's also situations where I've got my hand on something, right? And now I want my arm to move in such a way that my hand stays in place, right? Well, the problem is that if I move the body, my hand will like shoot way past the camera. And so what I would have to do is then, if I move my body forward, in order to keep my hand where it is, I would have to do all of this animating in order to just have my hand be in place. So wouldn't it be great if there was a system where I could take the end of my hand, just put it somewhere, and then everything else kind of like follows around. Like, I don't need to worry about everything else. It'll just figure it out, right? That's inverse kinematics, right? Where instead of solving from the torso outward to the hand, instead what we're doing is we're solving from the end back up to sort of the core or the root of wherever that bone chain is. And it's really, really good whenever you want the thing, the end of something, to remain in place, right? So part of the reason why you always see inverse kinematics on legs is because our feet are always in contact with something that generally doesn't move and we generally don't want to move, which is the ground, right? So that's why we put inverse kinematics on our feet, and that's why you see it so many places, is because frequently our feet are in contact with something and we don't want to have to adjust every single time we move in where that thing is, right? So that is why it's on your feet. But if you've ever worked with inverse kinematics, and if you've ever animated with inverse kinematics, one of the things you'll notice is that it's a great system. You'll think it is the best way to do everything. And then someday you'll try to animate a person doing like a roundhouse kick or something like that. And it's as you're trying to animate the person doing the roundhouse kick, you'll be like, oh, this is awful. Because a kick originates in your hips. Your driving force comes through your hips, and that extends into your thigh, and then that goes down to your calf, and then finally into your foot. So forward kinematics is way, 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 way easier to work with if you're doing something like a kick. Which is why a lot of really good rigs have something called an FK-IK switch, so that you can switch at a time between using forward kinematics and inverse kinematics. In theory, a good rig should have both of those things and be able to, you should be able to switch between them easily. If a rig doesn't have that, consider looking at a different rig, first of all. And second of all, like, you can get really, really fine-tuned with it, right? So for this character, right, I don't know how often I'll be doing a roundhouse kick. I don't know how often I'll be doing any kind of like leg-oriented actions. So I might just use an inverse kinematic rig for the legs and never implement a forward kinematic system for the legs. Because there's just not going to be a situation immediately anyway where my character is going to be needing to do that. Likewise, my character won't be going around and like grasping on rails or jumping up and grabbing on ledges and doing all sort of that kind of stuff. So I may not need an inverse kinematic system for the arms. I might just have only forward kinematics for the arms. Knowing what the rig is going to be used for and knowing what the character is going to be doing play a really, really big part in how complicated your rig should be. As an example, I mentioned just a moment ago that it would be a bit silly to have this rig have a situation where you put like inverse kinematics on the fingers. And I feel in most situations, putting inverse kinematics on the fingers is just like deeply unnecessary. But let's say you were making an animation where the character was playing a piano and each fingertip needs to press on a key and do that while the hand moves about. To do something like that, you absolutely have to have inverse kinematic. I mean, you don't have to, but you should absolutely try to have inverse kinematics on your fingers if you had someone like playing the piano or doing some other articulate little finger thing. So I hope that long-winded answer answers your question about things. Let's see here. Oh, that's cool. Perfect. Let's rename all of this. I get excited about stuff. Man, today's gone by so fast. Deform underscore, and I'm just gonna copy this whole thing because I don't want to write this out each time. Hand.l We'll do 2 dupe thumb, or actually I think the way I did this is thumb 00 dot L. Trying to remember how I did it in my other rig. Thumb 01 dot L. I think that's how I did it. So this is index 00 dot L, index 01 dot L, index 02 dot L, and then we just go down the line. Mid, dull, I'll call it middle, 00 dot L, middle 01 dot L, and middle 02 dot L. Ring 00 dot L, ring 01 dot L, ring 02 dot L. And did I skip one? No. I'll call this little 00 dot L, little 01 dot L, and little 02 dot L. So let me real quick look as best as I can, make sure that I named all of these correctly. No typos or anything. I had a rig, coincidentally, that I made for the adventurers. I made it for myself, but I gave it to the adventurers several months ago, and somewhere in one of the legs, I missed. I'm trying to remember what it was. Like one of them was capitalized and one of them wasn't, and it was messing up all of my animations and all of my mirroring. So I'm being extra careful now about my naming conventions, so that I don't have that happen again. Which is barely a typo when one is capitalized and the other isn't. But damn, you know. FKI switches aren't terrible. They're easy-ish to do once you know kind of what's going on. Let me make sure that all of these things are parented correctly. This guy's parent should be deform arm.low. These all are parented to this guy. Keep offset. This is parented to this guy. Keep offset. We hit Control Save. We select all of this. Then we symmetrize. All of this goes over here. Let's save again and then reparent to our rig and see how the hands are doing. So if I come in here, let me turn names off because it's just too much visual information. So I should be able to do this. And what's going on with the hand there is to be expected. This up here is fine because this is something that we can change with weight painting. And in general, you will need to weight paint things. The question is, how is this doing? And it's not bad. It's a fairly low resolution finger, but I will take it. That's good enough for me. We will need to repaint the hand, though. So if I take each of these guys... Hello? Oh. This bone got moved, and I don't know why, and I don't know where. There we go. Okay, cool. Never mind. It's fine. I think. No, why is it doing that? That's super weird. Something weird going on here that isn't doing quite what it should be doing. Oh, oh no, I see why. I see why. Ah, okay, perfect. Yes. Perfect. And I might change the orientation of those two so that they don't collide with each other so much. Yeah, that's doing good. Thumb. Doing good. Give a massive thumbs up. Yeah, man. We need to do some weight painting for the hand, but otherwise that'll do just fine. I might also divide up this bone so that you have the... these are your... Are tarsals in your hand? I don't remember. But I might also divide up the hand so that you get this kind of... one more additional joint in there. But yeah. Okay, cool. So this is what all I had planned for today was the deformation bones. I just thought I would get more done, but it's okay because we're technically on track for what was planned. It's a good question, and that's probably the question I'll end on. The question is what other bones do you add at this point? And then is there a reason to sort of go through and differentiate all of them as the deform bones? Probably what I'll do over the course of the weekend is I'll make some simple controls, and part of it is that even in order to get very simple things like inverse kinematics, for example, and part of the reason why I say inverse kinematics is simple is because it's a modifier. It's so built into a thing that there's somewhere in here is inverse kinematics, right? So I have a modifier that I just put that on a chain of bones and then it works, right? But in order to do that, it needs to have, first of all, a bone that it points to as a target. And so that extra bone, it's not a deformation bone, it's not anything, it's just a target. And it can be one of the other bones in my rig, but for a number of reasons, I like to differentiate it as its own individual unique bone. And then that in general should have a control that's oriented in world space. Because none of our bones down here are oriented in world space, and there was the whole thing about, like, we want to have as many controls oriented to the world as possible. You have the target and the control. So for just that, for just the IK for the legs, there needs to be 2 additional bones that need to be differentiated from everything else that don't deform the mesh, that will need to be added in. And for the more you do that for all the other parts, it's not a lot of extra bones, but it's enough where you always want to be very, very clear for yourself about what is a deformation, what is a control, what is things of that nature. You certainly don't need to use the crazy DFRM affix I use. Arguably, that's a bad habit. You could just do like D underscore and you know that's a deform because it's not going to be anything else. Yes, that's I always like to be needlessly descriptive in my affixes and file paths, which, again, there are reasons why you shouldn't do that, but I'm the only one who cares, so. And then that's another question, which is, no, and I don't mind answering, is can you lock a bone's motion to certain ranges or directions in relations to its parent, or is all of that handled in just animation? And the answer is you can absolutely lock things, and in many ways, you should absolutely lock things. So there's a couple different ways to do it. One of the first ones is that if you change the rotation mode of anything, you can actually lock out all other axes from being rotated in that thing. So here I have a leg, for example, right? And this leg is using full, up here in my little panel, full quaternion WXYZ rotation, right? If I take that to XYZ Euler, right? And then right up just above that, you can see those rotations and you can see those numbers change. I can actually lock Y and Z so it only rotates along the X axis. So this is a very, very hard lock. You shouldn't use this unless you are certain that it will never do anything but this one action. So usually I reserve these locks for controls. But this is one of the first and most efficient ways to just lock things and say like, no, you have to do this, right? So unlocking those for a moment and setting it back to Quaternion so I don't mess myself up later. The other thing is in anywhere where you add a bone constraint, you can do let me see here, limit location, rotation, and scale. So you can specifically set in degrees in both world space and local space the amount which a thing can transform. So if I said that we were going to limit this in local space to a minimum of -30 degrees and a maximum of 40 degrees. And then we'll actually just limit its X or its Y and Z completely, right? Now this bone can rotate to here and to here, and that's it. And it's with tools like this that you can start creating really complex rigs. And there's drivers and there's all sorts of other stuff that you can do. So yeah, Blender has a fully featured rigging system. Where it differs from other programs like Maya, for example, is just the fact that there's a lot of under the hood elements in Blender that you don't have to interact with that can cause discrepancies if you're not careful, that you do have to interact with in order to rig it all in Maya. And that's kind of the big difference between the two, right? Is it's like saying, okay, I want a car that drives fast. And someone says, okay, we've given you a car that drives fast. That's Blender. The problem is that you go to fill it up with gasoline, and the reason why you have a car that could drive fast is because they put like a diesel engine in it or something like that. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't say I wanted a totally different thing. And you can go in and you can specify that, but it's not something that you're exposed to by default. For being not a car guy in any way, shape, or form, I don't actually know how accurate of a metaphor that is. Um, yeah, I'm not even going to justify that. We're just going to let that sit off in the corner, and that's the statement I have to make about that. The difference between rigging in Blender and Maya is the difference between Unreal Engine and Unity. And I've said that before, but like Unity doesn't give you any tools, but it gives you what you need in order to make your own tools. Blender or Unreal Engine gives you tools, but if you don't like them for some reason, making your own is a bitch. So there you go. I don't know if that answered anything. I feel like that's veering even farther off track. It's an in-joke that I'm the only person who's in on. Anyway, we're gonna call it there. Probably what I'll do, I think, over the weekend is so no streams over the weekend. The goal is to stream in the evenings, Monday through Friday, every day, unless something goes wrong. And on Monday, we'll at least try to have this in a position where we can start animating with it, or I will have this in a position where you can start animating with it. And then we'll get some animations done. We'll throw all of that back in Unreal. And middle of next week, I imagine, there might be an entire day of just me figuring out how to implement Steam sessions with the Steamworks key. Because I was able to get that, and I am able to afford it now, which is great. Thank you, adventurers. So yeah, so there will be something happening soon. But that's it for the evening. Thank you guys for joining in. I appreciate your time as always. Ranting really went I hope it wasn't too. Tonight went by so fast. I hope tonight wasn't too far out in left field for anyone. I certainly enjoyed it. But yeah, I'll get this done probably over the weekend, and we'll try and be in a place where we can animate on Monday. With that said, you guys all get some rest. Have a